Hey everyone, and welcome to DataSense. I'm Nick, and if you caught our first episode, you know we're on a mission to explore the best open source data analysis and dashboarding tools out there. Today we have an exciting video. It just came out, Plotly Studio. Go to Plotly's website and check out the tool for yourself after this video. This time we're looking at Plotly Studio, and I've had a little bit of time to play with this, just a preliminary kind of analysis of how it works. And it seems a little bit more promising than Microsoft's data formulator. So let's dive in here. As you can see, I already have a data set that I was using, I was testing out. But we'll go ahead and we'll start a new project here. So Plotly's interface is a little bit different. Instead of connecting a database of different sources, it only allows you to use CSV and Parquet files, which are widely used, but it's kind of annoying you can't connect an external database to it. So Plotly asks you to, well, you don't have to do this, but it helps to build the context and develop some graphs off the bat, build a bit of a scene. And so it says, process and drive interesting charts no matter what, but if you have a specific aim or questions that you'd like to answer, please include them. This is kind of nice for the general democratization of data analysis and data visualization. For people who are not familiar with how to build graphs or what to build, this gives you a bit of a context window to kind of play and ask different questions or describe what you're trying to do or look for. A bit of a context here. We're going to look at Asian economies, and we are going to see how they fare in comparison to one another. So let's set this up a little bit. I want to compare Asian economies to see which country is doing better, specifically looking at measures like GDP. I've misspelled it. It's probably okay, but we'll respell it like GDP. GDP per capita. Let's do GDP growth. GDP per capita growth. Debt. Government debt per capita. We'll just do government debt growth. And unemployment rate, and interest rates. So just a few economic indicators to see how the economy is doing across the Asian. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And so Plotly Studio goes ahead and asks you to develop an outline. This builds like a markdown kind of outline, similar to how you might see a README file in GitHub or GitLab repository. As you can see, it outputs it here. It defines what the title, description, charts, and filters are. And this is how it starts to build out the dashboard that you'll see in just a minute. It's kind of nice as we think about developing our own tools at DataSense. This is how I've done it in the past to build dashboards, actually using Plotly, but not using Plotly's architecture to build out the dashboards. There's another markdown tool, open source tool called Quarto, and I've used that alongside Jinja 2 in Python to build reports and dashboards automatically in a similar fashion. So it's kind of nice to see that implemented here, and they're actually kind of showing you how that works. It takes a couple minutes to generate this. From my previous test, it took about 1.5 minutes. So we can see here it's developed a title, Asian economic performance comparison, comprehensive analysis of Asian member countries, economic indicators including GDP, blah, 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 which we've seen, to identify the top performing economies. And it's set out some charts specifically, and this is nice. I didn't see this before. You can actually add a chart before we dive into the dashboard. So GDP growth rates across Asian countries, as we would like to see. GDP per capita growth trends as a multi-line chart with checkboxes to toggle Asian countries. Government debt as a percentage of GDP as a bar chart with drop down. Unemployment rates across Asian countries as a heat map with a drop down for time aggregation, annual 5-year average. Interest rates versus inflation rates as a scatter plot. Overall economic performance ranking as a horizontal bar chart with multi-drop down to weight different indicators, GDP growth, unemployment, debt. So pretty comprehensive. These graphs sound nice. We'll see what they look like. This output's a little bit different. I'm not going to add in any charts here because we'll do that when we start to dive into things and trying to add our own charts. So the filters it's come up with is country name, that seems like a good one. Year range, that's pretty nice. We probably don't need 1960 to 2024, but we'll keep it for now. Economic indicator, data availability. That's kind of nice because, especially when looking at this big of a date range, we're going to get some gaps in our data. Not all economies or not all countries are going to have the complete data that we're looking for. So being able to sort by complete data only will be helpful in our analysis when we're actually looking and trying to use this data. Comparison period, last 5 years, 10 years, that's pretty nice too because it just gives you some buckets and ranges of years to look at. Economic development level with multi-drop-down, developed, emerging, and least developed countries, population size, category with drop-down. Okay. So the theme is professional economic analysis theme with blue and gold color scheme representing stability and prosperity, clean sans serif type typography, and data-focused visualization palette with clear country division. I actually don't really like the color they've come up with. Blue and gold, it seems too meh for me. So we're going to change this, and I'm going to go with, let's go professional modern financial economic analysis theme with blue, light blue hues and slate gray. Color scheme representing stability and prosperity. We don't need it to represent stability and prosperity. Clean sans serif typography and data focused visualization palette with clear country division. That's good. Focused specific on Asian measured companies for regional economic comparison performance benchmarking. Okay, let's generate our application. So the initial setup, I would say, is quite nice. It's pretty easy to load up a CSV file or a Parquet file if that's your preference, or you have large data. We don't have the ability to connect a database, so that kind of stinks. So I'm going to lose a little bit of points there. However, the process is pretty seamless, especially for somebody with no kind of background in this, to be able to just put in a CSV file, explain what they want to do, get an outline of what it's actually doing. It's kind of refreshing, and then just hit generate the app. So it's about as good as it could get. I don't see where else you could improve. It's fairly easy for anybody to pick this up and just start to get going with some data visualization or some data analysis, basic data analysis. Data connectivity and integration lacking. Maybe it's a feature they'll build out in the future. CSV is limited to a certain extent if you're working with really large data. That being said, I don't know if you want to work with big data in this. You can see how long it's just taking to generate a small data set. The data set we have is not too large. I think if you were using a pretty significant size Parquet file, that it's not going to work well. Too bad. I think it was about 3.5 minutes to generate. So in the grand scheme of things, how long it might take you to actually generate this dashboard, and you'll see it populate here in a minute. It's not really clear. They could add like a loading sign or something that the dashboard is loading, because you think, oh, it just spent 3 minutes, it did nothing, it gave me a title. But you'll see it actually does refresh here, and it gives you the ability to preview it in a browser. It does kind of, it hosts it. It looks like they're using Flask on the back end in Python. So we can see it's generated our dashboard. I mean, if you think, okay, 3.5 minutes to put this together, that's pretty good. Unless you already had a template set up, maybe in Tableau or Power BI, where you can just plug and play. This is pretty nice. It's for what it gives you out of the box. I think it gets pretty high points. Off the bat, out of the box, 3.5 minutes, you have a working dashboard. I mean, this is pretty incredible if you ask me. It's one of the better tools I've seen to actually do this from nothing to something, and how quickly it can do it. So we'll just go over what we got here. We've got a bit of a title here. It looks like it's constrained a little bit, and I don't believe that's within, don't want to delete that, no. Yeah, it's not constrained within the window, it's constrained within this box here. So it's just how they've coded it in. We've got a bit of a description, when the data was updated last, who was created by, and the data source. We've got Plotly's logo here. And then we've got our filters. You can hide the filters just to show the dashboard, but it's nice to see the filters. Later, I'll show you how you can edit these. All right, let's see what we got here. So some interactability, which you would expect with Plotly, because Plotly charts are very interactable, which makes them quite nice. And it's actually separated this data pretty well. The color scheme is not bad. You've got some similar colors here, like Philippines and Indonesia, Myanmar and Thailand, and Cambodia. They're kind of close, so it might be a little bit difficult to differentiate, but it's not too bad on here. You also have the ability to highlight over it, and you can see the figures, which is actually pretty nice as well. It's laid out decently well. Let's see if we can single click. Yeah, so that's nice thing. One thing I love about Plotly graphs is you double click and you're able to get the single actual legend on it, or the single country that you're looking at. It just helps separate it. If you want to look at a couple, you can add them back in when we set one of our filters. Like when I design my dashboards, the way I design them, the filters, this is probably filtering and loading the data. I can tell by how long it's taking. But I like to develop the views in the back end with filters on the actual, in the Python code, so that instead of filtering the data, we're just filtering the legend in the view by the type of country. But that wasn't too bad. That was actually fairly quick. And we can see, comparing the developed economies, Singapore is flourishing and Brunei is not so much. As expected, I think Singapore is quite a leader. If we look at the emerging countries, might give us a better... The average GDP growth, actually not so much higher than what I would expect. But yeah, Thailand's tracking it down a bit, 2.5%. All the other economies are over 5 in the last year. You can see our data coverage. So it's a nice metric. I forgot to go over this. So actually in the top here, it gives you some statistics about the data. And this is something I don't think a lot of, when we talk about democratizing data visualization and data analysis, although I probably wouldn't want to include this in my dashboard, especially if it's reporting to management, they don't necessarily care about this too much. They probably want to hear about it, just so they understand how good the data is that we're talking about, but they don't want to see this in a dashboard. But for people learning and people not familiar with data analysis, these are really important metrics to look at and to know and have in the back of your mind when you're talking about or actually reporting on the data. So it's kind of nice that they include this, because it gives you a good idea of what your data set you're looking at in the dashboard. So moving kind of to our next area, querying capabilities, more data exploration and data analysis. We've already started to showcase some of this a little bit, but we can see if we have a little bit more capabilities here. And adequacy of unemployment. Yeah, it gives you all the columns. So when we were looking at that specification, it was talking about filtering by specific things. It'd be nice to have more ability to add or remove these. And I wonder if this is clear all. Yeah, that might be, no, because this is selecting multiple, right? Yeah. Some way to filter this. Let's see if we type in this. Debt. Central government debt total. Descending best to worst. See 2023. Okay, so we do get some data. Can we select multiple years? Unless only a couple countries are reporting it, Malaysia and Thailand. That could be the case. Seems like that is the case. Oh, current LCU. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. Percent of GDP. This is what we want to see. Right. Okay. Do we have data for the most recent year? I think we do. Yeah, so you can see it's growing. It'd be nice to be able to, let's see if we can plot this over time. So this is getting into more kind of playing around, getting more specific graphs in terms of what you want to see. So you can see the chart outline here. It says overall economic performance, rank as a horizontal bar chart with multiple drop down to weight different indicators, toggle things. And then it has this remix capability. So I'm not going to actually do this for this chart. I'm going to go back here to the dashboard, and I just want to show you what the remix capability kind of does. Because let's say, okay, we've got quite a few charts here. We've got a table with the data down below. Interest rates versus inflation rate. This might be a little bit hard to read. It's kind of difficult to understand what's actually going on here. We have inflation rate on the bottom. We have interest rate on the top. And then you just have a smattering of different stuff here. So even if we go to, okay, let's just look at Thailand. Can we not? Okay, we'll look at Indonesia. Trying to make sense of this is quite difficult. Show trend line would be better. Let's see if we can get a trend line here. We'll just choose one country because I think it's going to take a little bit. So we'll wait for this chart to load before I remix it. And I'll kind of discuss some of the different elements here. So hiding this, we have our setup, our data layout theme. We've clicked through these already to see what's going on, and it's just kind of descriptions of what everything is, which is nice to see. Oh, okay, it did add the trend lines. So it is going back and calculating it, so it's weird that it says show trend line and it didn't calculate it before. It's a little bit odd, I guess. If we just look at Thailand, interest rates versus inflation, it's declining. As inflation rate increases, the interest rates decline. See, that seems a little bit unintuitive. As inflation rates increase, interest rates decline. Yeah, I think this is some bad data. This is showing, I'd love to know where it's taking this data. Can we look at the data here? Comparing interest rate and inflation rates for easier measured countries with optional trend line analysis. I don't think this data is right. It's showing inflation rates of 121%, 123% last year. All right. Let's take out that graph. Let's do some remixing. So how do we remix? Doesn't really tell you. And if you don't know what you're doing here, you don't know. But we're going to go to data cards, because this is where it's going to show us our different data cards. So you can see I can remove this. So I was talking about before. If I wanted to remove this, I could do it here. Create a data card component displaying key metrics. Maybe instead of key metrics of the data, key risk metrics based on inflation, interest rates, and debt levels. That's something more intuitive. I don't know if we want to remix or if we want to hit go here. I don't remember seeing this go button before. I think it was just remix, so let's try hitting go. Because we want to replace it. We don't want to remix it. We don't want to add to it or change something in it. We want this. Let's see how this works. I'll talk a little bit about the chart customization in a minute, and we'll go to the theme. You'll see how you can change the theme a little bit. It is a bit structured. It would be nice, and I've seen some tools, which I'm not going to comment on which tools, where you can kind of drag and drop and move stuff around. There's not that ability here. Potentially with our remix function, we could move stuff around and remove stuff, which we will try with that graph below, because I don't think that inflation interest rate graph is quite right unless I'm misunderstanding how it is. Yeah, so we don't necessarily want that. We want a specific metric. I think it's doing the same for interest rates, right? Lending rate, deposit rate, yeah, same thing. Taking an average rate. That's not so bad, but still there's going to be some disparity between what the central bank rate is, what the deposit rate is, what the lending rate is. That's not as bad. This inflation one though can be, we have to look at the data, but that could be wrong. Debt, external debt, government debt. So yeah, this again is taking just anything that contains these debts, which we don't want, and inflation is greater than 5. Yeah, so that's intuitive. That's intuitive. I mean, but inflation at 5%, I guess over the past 20 years, that would be high. In the 80s, that wouldn't be that high. That's intuitive if it's getting the right metrics. But it's not, as we can see. It's showing inflation rates over 100%. So, I mean, you need to have some ability to go through this and edit this a little bit. And that's not a fault of this, actually. It just kind of shows that there's not much data cleaning happening behind the scenes, or intuitive data construction, I guess, transformation, which I think is something you would need. And I guess that would be one of my main critiques as someone who would use this, like myself. Maybe if I go into the data table, we can modify and transform the rows. I don't recall having that ability before, but I don't know if I looked at that. Because I didn't dig into the code as much, so I couldn't really see what was happening. So it's nice to see this code, actually. Specification, okay, average interest rate, the most recent year data. All right, anyways, that looks nice. We'll leave that in here. We'll go back to this data table. I think this is going to show the data that's in here, right? Yeah, it's not going to show the ability to clean this data. Let me just see what happens when we search inflation here. Right, see, it's taking all these inflation metrics. So we have 3 inflation metrics for each country. So we have inflation, consumer prices, annual percent, inflation GDP deflator, annual percent, which is probably what's throwing off. Yeah, these bottom 2 are with these GDP deflator is what's throwing off. So if we go back in this code for these data cards, let's see if we can do contains inflation. What was it called? Consumer prices. Let's just do inflation consumer prices. We don't want or, we want inflation consumer. That shouldn't matter. Inflation consumer price, that should be better. Now let's see how long it takes us to update this. That was pretty quick. That's nice. See, when you modify the code, when it doesn't have to have the LM go in and think and modify the code, I don't see anything though, which is a bit troubling. But it does take a minute to render this stuff, so hopefully that's it. I don't think there's an error in my code. It'd be nice if it showed it though. Right? No, because that was a... What if we go... Yeah, okay, there it is. Yeah, okay. That looks more right. Average inflation, 5.3%. Still not too bad, though. If you think about how it's a little bit of a different experience, right? Because you don't have the immediate feedback. And so that, I think, can be annoying for some people, especially if you're not used to it. If you go into whatever, Tableau, or if you go into Power BI, if I delete a chart, it deletes the chart. I see the dashboard with the deleted chart, right? That's immediate feedback. Here you don't have immediate feedback because what it's doing is it's updating that back-end markdown file of how to define the layout for the dashboard. It's removed that graph. It's now reinterpreting the code and reinterpreting that markdown file in terms of how to take the code and create that code for your dashboard to display this. So it takes a few minutes because there's some extra steps. Now, is that time saving? It could be time saving depending on who you are. If you're someone who takes a while to go through the dashboard, edit things, don't really know what you're doing, how to code in it, maybe you don't know DAX queries very well because they can be super complex, especially for things that if you know how to code in Python and you go to DAX and trying to do the same thing, it's a nightmare for some things. They're so easy, so unintuitive. Can you do complex things? Yeah, just like in Excel. You can, with VBA and Excel, you can do extremely complex calculations, make insane dashboards. Do they take time to make? Yeah, but I mean, you can still do it. It's the same thing in Power BI, I think. That's why Python's nice and having this open source ability. I don't see any way to edit the size of these. So we're going to jump into kind of theming and actually modifying this. Like maybe I want this graph to look like this. So in this specification, yeah, see 50. Okay, we can change. Can I change this? Yep. Specification, GDP growth, sets components. Set component width to 50% by default. We can change the logo URL. That's kind of cool. That's nice. I didn't know you could do that. I don't remember seeing this here before last time either. And here's where the widths are for it. Okay. Okay, duh. Should have gone to layout. Official. Okay, 33. Okay, good. You know what? Now I'm thinking Remix might just redo how, like, resend the prompt so you get slight changes and variations. I'm not positive. I don't know what's happening. I don't know what the Remix button does. I thought I understood it. Now I'm not so sure. When we're looking, we've kind of jumped into this already a bit. Performance and scalability. I think this will struggle if you load a big Parquet file into this. And I could be wrong. I've seen some people playing with this with some bigger data sets. That looks good. Yeah, that looks good. Okay, it did work. It did do a third. Nice. And the sizing and the spacing is nice. That's pretty good. Like, the ability to modify that is nice. We can hide these. I can change these filters, I think. If we go to filter component, yeah, I can change what I want to see here. So maybe we don't want population size. We don't really care about that too much. Comparison period, last 5 years, last 10 years. Yeah, that's pretty good. So that's good. Maybe hypothetically, I can go in and do other things while that's loading. Okay, good. I can do that. Oh, and this is nice. Yeah. So we had this before. It shows the sample card preview. I don't think it showed the sample card preview last time when I was looking at it. I have some colors here. I just want to change this, and I want to use some different colors with. Maybe we'll keep that blue. Forget it. All right. 8BCEB3 as the EB3. And F5, FD, F7 is the primary, and as the primary and excellent colors, and maybe we have. I think Avenir is available. Avenir type out code for fonts. And data focused visualization palette. Yeah, let's see if we can do that. Now, see, do I hit enter or do I hit remix? I think remix does it for me. It just changes it up. I think I'm misunderstanding what remix does. I thought it would remix this, but now I think it just changes what that prompt is automatically. So if you don't like blue and gold, the finance thing, it just comes up with some different prompt for you. They're horrible colors. Perfectly acceptable. That's probably true. I just chose 2 random colors off that list of colors that I had. I think one is very light and one is kind of light, like a minty green. Underneath, I think. So I think it's because we chose a different font. So it actually did update the font too, which looks good. Didn't get the slider. Maybe slider's not an option. I don't know. Maybe I'm not calling it right. I thought it was called a slider though. Good. Looks good. I mean, our risk score, probably not right. Debt to GDP, 3.2%. I also don't think that's right. I think that number's wrong. But, okay. We are going to add in a graph now. So we're going to click the add button. And this is kind of my final gripe about this. I like that they've added the code back in so I can look at the code. There's no ability for me to take, like, in Microsoft Data Formulator, we had the ability to add columns, calculate a column, and add those in to make a chart. It worked very poorly. It didn't work at all. But at least it kind of had that functionality, and in theory, if you look at their paper, it looks like it should work. It's nice the way they've laid it out and described it. And that's kind of how a more traditional data analyst would develop and build a chart in a program like this. So having that capability would be, I think, nice. At least especially, okay, if we're talking about someone who doesn't have that skill set, doesn't really know what to go in, what to build, I think this is great. Being able to just describe what you want to see is great for, again, the democratization of data visualization, which we still haven't gotten it there yet in most applications. So it needs to have some additional layer of functionality, and maybe Plotly's thinking, you know what, anybody who's going beyond this is going to be using our actual library and building them out. But it would still be nice to be able to like add a chart and select the columns I want, because I think that's more efficient. Having kind of the 2 layers of functionality, it doesn't have to all be AI. Having AI do some transformations, awesome. If I can select some columns, have it do some transformations, I think that's great. I'm fearful of doing the C examples because when we did that in Microsoft Data Formulator, it was horrible. We'll click C examples. Okay, create a line chart that shows trends. Okay, so these are big. Display heat map. These are distribution with a histogram. We want to create choropleth showing the different countries in Asian for the selected, showing the different countries in Asian by GDP growth rate. We'll just do by you know what? Let's do by fertility rate. We'll throw a curveball in there. Map starts over there. Maybe you should be able to set the coordinates for this automatically, because every time Every time someone loads into this dashboard, I'll make it bigger, I'll make it 100%, it doesn't really matter at this point. Every time somebody loads in this dashboard, in a lot of the dashboards I've created where I've used this, you have to set the center coordinate, because if it loads in like this, someone's going to think, what am I looking at? There's no data here. They're not going to think to move over. So you have to set the coordinates so it zooms in on this, which is not done automatically, and you can modify that in the code. This looks a lot better. When I created this graph, albeit I used a different indicator, it had huge range on this, and you couldn't determine the difference between them. It just all looked yellow, for instance. But this looks a lot better. So this has done a pretty good job. Documentation. Now let's go documentation. Welcome to Plotly Studio. Probably should have looked at this before we did it. Student created project, uploading data. If you don't have a data set, try sample data, setting context goals. Okay, so it does give you, this should pop up right away. It should say, new to Plotly Studio, see the documentation. Because otherwise I wouldn't know to click there to go to the documentation. I didn't see it. I'm more of a dive into things though. I like to dive in, then read the documentation. Usually. Pricing, that's what I was looking for. Okay, here we go. So let's see, okay, so for $29 a month, so for free for explorers, learners, getting started with AI apps, limited AI usage, CSV and Parquet, one app running, 7-day limit. Ooh, 7-day limit on Plotly Cloud. Oh, so it deletes, you'll see when I publish it, it publishes the cloud, I guess it deletes it after 7 days, which is super important. It didn't even give you the ability to look at the code in this free version. This trial version, you couldn't look at the code. I think that's a big miss. I think you should be able to view this code in the free version. It's necessary. How else am I supposed to figure out if the graph is being created in the right way? That's a miss. This needs to be in the free version. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is just show you what happens when you publish it. So you can see uploading 1 in 5 minutes. This puts it on Plotly's cloud and hosts it for free, as we just saw in the pricing. And then you can share a link. It's a public link. You can share it with anybody. That's kind of nice. I like that shareability, that ability to just publish it. Like I said, if I was using this in my previous organization and somebody came to me with a data set, said, can you put a dashboard together really quickly? I want to be able to look at this data and use it for whatever report or presentation or policy piece I'm putting together. Yeah, being able to just toss it in here, publish it, and send them a link, be like, look at it here. Oh, that's so nice. That's so nice. You're a bit limited in the free version, but hypothetically, if they're just temporary dashboards, I don't need more than 7 days anyways. If I'm going to build it out, something more permanent, I'm gonna code it myself regardless. So that's kind of handy. We still run into that issue though. If it's sensitive data, I can't do that. I can't publish it. I'm not going to publish this. I'm going to end it here and make some notes while they're fresh in my mind. But I'll post the ratings at the end of this video, and yeah, I think you should check this out. I recommend checking this out. This is a lot better than what we just experienced with Microsoft Data Formulator. This is usable. I think for people who are not data analysts, don't have experience with code, don't know how to build or really what to look for, this is nice to be able to go and play around and try and learn some of the techniques and how some of this data is built. Are you gonna create something more sophisticated, that's more analytically capable? Even I think developing these KPIs, I think people who don't have that background are going to struggle to get this information accurately. As we saw when I put this together, are they going to know to go in and look at the code and be able to understand that? Are they going to have the ability to look at the code? No and no. And so if they can't figure out why inflation rate is showing 50% on average, it's dead in the water right there. And that's all we have for today. Stay tuned for our next video in this series, where we'll go over maybe a more comprehensive but similar tool, and we'll compare it. I think this gives us a much better baseline to run off of. Microsoft Data Formulator, big fail. Plotly Studio, thumbs up. Needs some work. I still have some gripes about it. Would I use it personally? Possibly if I was trying to put something quick together just to see how it works, but for anything in production purposes, probably not. It just takes too long. The customizability is nice if I'm paying for it, but if I'm paying for it and I have an LLM and I know how to code, why not just do it myself already in Python? I don't know. I'd like to see the use cases and see more of what comes out of this now that it's public. We can help. Find links in the description for more information. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.